The moment Karen marched onto my land waving her clipboard, I knew something wild was about to unfold. But I never imagined the river itself, the same calm, winding stream that had been in my family for generations, would become the force that set everything right. The story begins on a bright spring afternoon when I noticed a cluster of unfamiliar signs posted along the edge of my property. Bold letters read, "Community Property, HOA Authorized Access Only." At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, but as I walked closer, I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice echoing across the water. She was standing on the riverbank, instructing a group of neighbors on where they could place their kayaks, picnic chairs, and even a floating dock. My floating dock. I confronted her immediately. "Karen, this is my riverbank. You can't just claim it." She shot me a smug smile that made my blood pressure spike. "Actually," she said, tapping her clipboard, "the HOA has decided this river serves the whole neighborhood. That makes it community property. So technically, you should be thanking me for organizing things." I reminded her that the river wasn't even part of the HOA jurisdiction. She waved her hand dismissively as if swatting at a fly. "Details," she said. "Nature belongs to everyone." The neighbors looked embarrassed, unsure whether to side with her or back away. But Karen, emboldened by attention, continued giving orders as if she were the self-appointed river queen. I told her to remove the signs by sunset or I'd call the county. She laughed and said, "Good luck proving this river is yours." That night, frustration kept me awake, until the sound of distant thunder shifted my focus. Forecasts had mentioned possible storms, but I didn't expect the torrential downpour that followed. Rain hammered the ground. The river swelled, and within hours, the calm stream turned into a roaring force of nature. By dawn, the river had risen so high that the unauthorized signs Karen put up were floating downstream, like defeated soldiers, abandoning the battlefield. The makeshift dock she helped install was twisted, broken, and carried away with the current. Even the patch of land she strutted across the day before was submerged. As I stood on the porch watching the muddy water churn, a strange sense of justice washed over me. Nature had delivered its own verdict. No paperwork needed. In the aftermath, I walked down to inspect the damage. The river, though calmer now, still carried bits of debris from Karen's grand community project. It was almost poetic. Every piece of her overreach swept far beyond the neighborhood. And somewhere deep down, I suspected this was only the beginning of a much bigger clash for us all. By mid-morning, the storm had passed, but its impact lingered like a bruise across the landscape. I grabbed my boots and headed toward the riverbank, still half expecting Karen to show up with another set of ridiculous rules printed on HOA letterhead. Instead, I found something even more unbelievable. Karen herself, standing knee-deep in mud, staring at the wreckage with an expression that flickered between outrage and confusion. The moment she saw me, her face twisted. "This is your fault," she shouted, pointing at the overturned dock half buried in branches. "You sabotaged the river!" I blinked, unsure whether to laugh or question her sanity. "Karen," I said carefully, "do you honestly think I control the weather?" She didn't hesitate. "You knew the storm was coming. You let nature destroy community property just to make a point." "Community property." She said it again, as if repeating the lie would eventually make it true. Before I could respond, 2 county officials approached from the trail. They had been called out early to assess the flooding damage, and from the looks on their faces, they were not thrilled to see HOA drama waiting for them. The taller official introduced himself, glanced at the scattered debris, and then at Karen's mud-splattered shoes. "Ma'am," he asked, "why are there HOA signs in the middle of a restricted riparian buffer zone?" Karen puffed out her chest. "Because this river belongs to the neighborhood. I was organizing recreational access." The officials exchanged a long, slow look that said everything. The shorter one pulled out a clipboard. Not a Karen clipboard, but a legal one, and began writing. "First," he said, "this riverbank is privately owned. Second, HOA authority does not extend beyond its defined boundaries. And third, installing structures, signage, or altering this area without a permit is a violation." Karen's confidence cracked instantly. But the community needs a riverfront," she stammered. "You can't expect people to just sit at home." The taller official sighed deeply. "Ma'am, needing something doesn't mean you're allowed to steal it." Her jaw dropped. As they continued explaining the fines, the environmental regulations, and the legal consequences of her tampering, a small crowd of neighbors gathered along the trail. Some looked shocked. Others looked relieved. It was as if everyone had been waiting for Karen to finally meet someone she couldn't talk down, override, or bulldoze with her self-declared authority. And just when I thought the scene couldn't get more ironic, a loud crack echoed from the river. The embankment shifted, and a giant slab of muddy earth slid forward, barely missing Karen's shoes. She shrieked and scrambled backward, convinced nature was targeting her personally. Honestly, I couldn't blame nature for trying. Karen didn't show her face for the rest of the day, but rumors spread faster than the stormwater draining back into the river. By the next morning, everyone in the neighborhood had heard the story. The river rose, wiped out Karen's unauthorized community project, and nearly took her with it. And while most people laughed behind closed doors, some quietly admitted they felt a little uneasy. Nature didn't usually pick sides, but lately, it felt like the river itself had chosen to fight back. I decided to take the officials' advice and gather all historical documents proving the river's ownership. The old family records were stored in a cedar trunk in my attic, and as soon as I cracked it open, the smell of aged paper hit me like a wave. Inside were maps, beautiful hand-drawn maps from generations ago showing the river's exact boundaries, the easements, and the original land deeds my great-grandfather signed. It was all ironclad proof. Just as I began organizing everything, a frantic knock echoed through my house. When I opened the door, I found my neighbor, Mark, out of breath and wide-eyed. "You need to come see this," he said. "Karen is back and she brought backup." We headed toward the river, and sure enough, Karen stood near the bank with a group of HOA board members behind her. But this time she wasn't yelling, she was crying. Actual frustrated tears. The board members looked uncomfortable but determined, and when they saw me approaching, they stepped aside so Karen could speak. "This is ridiculous," she said, waving her hands dramatically. "The river destroyed our property, and now the county is fining us. We need you to help appeal it." I crossed my arms. "Your property?" She winced but pressed on. "Fine, your property, technically. But the community used it. The HOA didn't deserve this." One of the board members stepped forward. "We didn't authorize any of this," he admitted quietly. "We didn't even know she put up signs." Karen acted alone. The look on her face was pure betrayal. "You said you'd back me up," she whispered. "You promised." But the board members were done shielding her. Before I could respond, a sudden rumbling sound rose from the river. The current, swollen from the storm, carved deeper into the eroded bank. A large chunk of soil gave way, plunging into the water with a splash so loud it made all of us jump back. The river surged, swirling like something alive. Karen screamed and stumbled backward again. "This river is cursed," she yelled. "It's targeting me!" No one laughed. Not this time. Because the river didn't look normal. It looked angrier, stronger, as if it had more to say. And deep down, I knew the river wasn't finished with her yet. The next few days were surreal. Karen refused to leave, insisting she could somehow negotiate with the river, the HOA, and me all at once. The neighbors, however, stayed far back, whispering about how the river had become more than just a natural feature. It felt like a guardian, defending what was rightfully mine. I spent the mornings documenting the riverbank, taking photos of the washed-out signs and broken dock remnants. Every picture told the same story. Overreach meets consequence. Karen, on the other hand, was relentless. She tried filing complaints, sending emails, even hiring a lawyer who clearly hadn't seen anything like this. But every attempt was delayed, blocked, or dismissed because she had no legal standing. Nature had already done its part, and the law was simply formalizing it. One afternoon, Karen appeared again, determined to set up a new temporary dock, muttering about community, enrichment, and recreational access as she carried planks toward the muddy riverbank. A loud snap echoed. The remnants of the previous dock had shifted under the soil, sending a spray of water directly toward her. She jumped back, shrieking, and the neighbors nearby couldn't hide their laughter. Even the HOA members who had once supported her now shook, their heads in disbelief. I stepped closer and said calmly, "Karen, the river has spoken. Your rules don't apply here. This land, this water, they have their own guardians." She glared at me, dripping wet from the unexpected splash, and screamed something incoherent about fairness and community rights. But it was pointless. She had lost not just the battle, but the narrative. The river had already proven who was in charge. Over the next week, the river slowly returned to its peaceful flow, as if satisfied that order had been restored. The neighbors, who had been quietly watching the drama unfold, began sharing stories about how the river had intervened on its own. Some called it karma, others called it poetic justice. But everyone agreed on one thing. Karen's attempts to seize what wasn't hers had failed spectacularly. By the end of it all, Karen retreated. The HOA removed the rogue signs. The dock was repaired properly with permits in place, and the river, serene as ever, meandered peacefully past my land. I realized something essential. Some battles don't need your hands. Nature sometimes fights them for you. Standing by the river one evening, I watched the sunset reflect on its calm surface. The water whispered quietly, carrying away memories of chaos, entitlement, and audacity. It reminded me that while people can try to manipulate rules, there are forces far bigger and far wiser that maintain balance. And Karen? She had learned painfully that the river answers to no one. Nature had spoken, justice had been served, and my river was finally at peace. If you enjoyed watching Karen get what she deserved, hit that subscribe button and comment below. What would you do if someone tried to take your property?